Hey guys, this is Joseph Puplo. I'm here with Charles Mire. Had this crazy idea last year that I was going to create a web show. I saw that I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of writing and still wanted to go and chat with people and talk about cool stuff going on. So I said, "Hey, I have the studio. I know a whole bunch of cool people, so let's start chatting with them about anything and everything." Charles, tell the world a little bit about yourself and what you're up to currently.
Sure. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Structured Printing. We are a 3D printing company, and we make an add-on device for existing 3D printers that lets those printers print with soft materials rather than the hard plastic filaments. And we launched our product on Kickstarter in the summer of 2014, sold about 400 units, and now we've just started 2015, and we're just about to ship our product.
So, like, you use Kickstarter. It looked like you guys were out of the chute and it did fantastically. Like, what are some like tips and like things that you saw that really made a difference for you to make that a successful campaign, as opposed to like you guys were truly the potato salad of Kickstarter campaigns, but with actually something of useful merit, not knocking potato salad aficionados. But
Yes.
share your thoughts on that.
What really helped the success of our campaign, like other successful campaigns, is we had working prototypes. We had actual printed samples from those working prototypes, we made the product visible to the world at the San Francisco Maker Faire in May, about a month before we launched on Kickstarter. And that was very important because the San Francisco Maker Faire was attended by about 135,000 makers.
Yeah.
So a very, very huge audience. Lots of people got to see our product, see it in action. And so then when we emailed all these people to say, "Hey, our Kickstarter campaign is live," they remembered. They said, "Okay, yes, this is real. I think I can take a bet and buy this product." So that helped, and then we also reached out to a lot of our media contacts to just sort of spread the word. Hey, we're launching. Stay tuned and be ready. By setting up that media campaign and getting everything, just the excitement kind of ramped up, really helped us on the Kickstarter campaign. And then we also had a high quality video, high quality photos. So all of those elements played together in that success.
I think when I was looking at it, one of the things I thought that was really working, and we had your partner Andrew in here shooting some video. I was really proud that we were able to get you in there before you were Kickstarter famous, as it were. But the one of the things I thought that was just really good, that hit a really good tenor and timing, was just not only did you, like, as soon as you hit a milestone, it didn't look like you guys were caught flat-footed. Like, you already had ideas and you had reasons.
Yep.
For people to get to the next level. I sort of see a lot of like Kickstarter campaigns or anything in Indiegogo or what have you. It's just like, give me money and where's my money and why haven't you given me money yet? Where it seemed like a logical progression. And it's like, well, if you unlock, you actually sort of gamify the whole process and you actually got more to get more.
That's true. A lot of successful Kickstarter campaigns will have stretch goals, and those stretch goals are key to drive excitement, but then there's also extra value in those stretch goals. So they have to be something meaningful that helps everybody. So then one person who's a customer is going to tell their friends because, if more people support this project, we're going to get some really interesting stretch goals that are going to make it beneficial to everybody.
Yeah.
In addition, we have also positioned ourselves as not purely just a hardware company and here's a piece of hardware and now we're done and we're going to make some other hardware later on.
Yeah.
We've also tried to build a community around printing soft materials because it's not a widely used technique yet for 3D printing. And so because of our experience and our knowledge, we're well positioned to start this community. And so I think people saw a lower risk in buying this product because, okay, yes, these guys are going to tell me a little bit of what they've learned, what they know, and that way I can get started and experiment and not just be stuck on my own and this doesn't work right, so therefore I wasted my money.
Yeah.
And but then we also want to get into the materials space because with our material science background, we've been telling people, hey, look, yes, you can use these off-the-shelf materials or make your own materials and so on, but then eventually you will be able to actually buy materials from us that we will guarantee will give you a certain type of print result.
Yeah.
And so that's an area that we'll be moving into in the future.
Cool. Well, I want to sort of talk about like the politics and optics of like running a Kickstarter, like
Sure.
like a successful one versus like
Yeah.
a non-successful one.
Right.
So, I mean, as soon as you obviously see things are clicking, and I mean, obviously you put a lot of work in to make sure things go right.
Yes.
But you don't know. You're putting yourself out there. You just
That's
hope,
correct.
you just hope it goes.
Yes.
But the second like things start clicking to you, it's got to be a scenario of everyone and their brother like suddenly is your best friend, or is this like
to some extent
they were there all along or something?
Yeah, to some extent. I think the campaigns that go above $1 million probably have a larger extent of this problem than what we did.
Yeah.
We had a very successful campaign, but we weren't at the $1 million mark. If you're at the $1 million mark, then yes, suddenly everybody wants to be your partner.
Yeah.
There's a lot more traction there. So we had enough traction to validate it for us to ship product and to have a good story to tell behind that as we grow our company. We did have a few people reach out to us. They want to become a distributor of our product and those kinds of things. And we were fortunate to get very good advice from one of our mentors early on that as we're in the very early stages of growing our business, not to pursue the channel partners yet.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough traction to really make that worthwhile. And then secondly, we don't, there's so many ins and outs with setting up these kinds of business arrangements that if you jump too early, you might lock yourself into a contract that ends up not working out very well in your favor, or for both parties long term as it plays out. And so it's better to focus on building the business and getting more customers, selling more product before pursuing those channel relationships.
At Print Shop, we got a lot of like off the wall requests in terms of like, I want to do this to this, and you sort of look at it as like, I don't see how this business really. Maybe there's something there.
Right.
I have no clue.
Yes.
Like, what was the wildest sort of like person reaching out to you, and the sort of like either during the whole Kickstarter thing or after, is sort of like any interesting stories there? Because
I think after Kickstarter, well after Kickstarter, as we're still generating publicity for our product, we started to find there were a few people that seemed a little bit eccentric reach out to us, and there's nothing wrong with eccentricity, but it just when you try to set up a business arrangement, somebody's making a promise, oh yes, I can do this and that for you, whatever. You like to go on the internet, LinkedIn or whatever, and find out more about them. Are they real? Do they have a track record? What are their references? And some of these people, we weren't able to find anything. And so it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, but from a business perspective, you still have to be nice, and you just can't be rude and brush these people off. And
no, for sure.
So, so you play it nice and just say, well, we're not ready for this at this time, or those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be like a dick to anyone,
right?
But at the end of the day, you recognize, oh man, this is a potential time suck.
Yes.
Everyone's had those moments when they're sitting on this conference call and listen to someone drone on for 15 minutes, and and you're just like that. You're dead air just for sheer politeness. Perhaps we should be less polite. I don't know.
Well, and that's one.
Maybe it's our Canadian nature. I've been on business development calls where if they thought I didn't have any business, even if I thought there was a good reason, I just got my ass kicked quickly.
Yeah. And that is one.
That's a good question for the comments. Do you think if you're in a conference call and you just want it to be over and get out, do you say like "fuck you, get out of here"? Or we can swear on this show, by the way.
No
like,
worries.
there's no rules within the confine of our crappy little studio.
Yeah, I think the biggest pitfall to watch out for in the broader context, conference calls or otherwise, especially on a post-Kickstarter for a company, is the time sucks. Because your focus post-Kickstarter has to be getting product shipped. And every little time suck chips away at that.
Yeah.
And so by eliminating those, you have a better chance of shipping with minimal delays, because every Kickstarter campaign has a delay of some sort that happens in manufacturing. But by eliminating as many of those time sucks as possible, you have a bit more of a friendly face towards your customers.
Yeah.
You're able to give them a true scenario of why you had a delay, rather than, oh, these 50 time sucks, stopped our shipping, our manufacturing.
Yeah,
that's
just not going to fly.
No.
Yeah, and there's obviously been stuff been put in place on things so that the Kickstarters and the Indiegogos of the world can be a little bit more, I guess, legally insulated from people who are saying, I want your money. Oh, there's no chance they can deliver on it.
Yes.
And obviously there's sort of, in some ways, that stigma out there. So in order to penetrate that thing and just saying, am I putting $60 into something legit, or is it $60 and I'm going to get something out, or $60 it's going to ship in 5 years, or $60 I'm going to get this when when the little bio says I'm going to expect it, obviously, is a huge.
And communication with the customers during and after the campaign is key.
Yeah.
Because if there's suddenly this wall of silence from a customer perspective, you can send emails all day, and if you're not going to get a response, that lowers your confidence in your support of that project.
Yeah.
So if you at least get an email that says, we've had a delay, and here's why, okay, it sucks that you had a delay, but okay, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
That goes a long way, and we've had a lot of support from our customers with our communication despite the delays that we've had, and the overwhelming emphasis has been focus on getting us a quality product versus shipping it early.
Yeah.
And so that has kind of helped reassure us that, okay, yes, it's
don't cut the corners.
Don't cut the corners, and make sure that it is the quality product that we want to sell. So
fair enough. No, and I think that's totally reasonable. Like, and I'll use the same question, just talking about the outrageous ask and things there. Like, what is the most outrageous ask you've ever got from like any of the customers or anyone of the backers? If you're allowed to share, the zanier the better.
Well, interestingly enough, we most of the asks were not too outrageous. In our case, we were a bit fortunate that way, but I think a general theme was we had a lot of people asking about compatibility with various printers. And so we made sure to do as much research on the backgrounds of these printers and to reach out to some of these other printer manufacturers if we were unsure. So that was a bit of an effort, but we saw it as a customer service. Basically, we're trying to validate, okay, yes, it looks like it will work very well with this printer, the company thinks it's a great product, and so on. And but then there were other printers that were very proprietary. So the MakerBot 5th generations, for example, have proprietary components in them that essentially exclude our product. And so we had, MakerBot has been doing a big push into schools, but because they're buying the 5th generation 3D printer, as a school, they can't really integrate our product, even though it would be very beneficial to the education program. So we've started some early conversations with MakerBot.
So how do we fix that?
Yeah, so
MakerBot, if you're out there, 5th generation, we got to have a good chat here about that.
Absolutely, because many customers do want to print with soft materials on the MakerBot 5th gen, so the MakerBot Minis or any of the other similar technologies. So, the only way you can work it out really is to talk to those manufacturers. Maybe somebody will do some sort of a teardown, or here's a hack on how to integrate this and work around the proprietary stuff. But all of that becomes a cat and mouse game. It's the same thing with other technologies, such as unbricking your or unlocking your iPhone, or those kind of things. And so that's not the most desirable approach for customers. People who are very technically inclined probably don't mind that as much, but most users, they just want to use the product. And so it's better to have all parties play together friendly.
Have you had any like sort of aha moments, like when you were going through the Kickstarter process, or like you just feel like you've turned a corner, or there's just like some like holy shit, this is freaking awesome. Like, as an entrepreneur myself, we all go through like the absolute roller coaster. It's like you're the best thing in the world one day, and then you're just in the pits of despair the next. Share with some of your high points.
Yeah, so the high points have really been through a lot of the comments and the customer feedback. So we've had customers through the Kickstarter campaign post comments that they think this is the most amazing product ever, and that made us feel very good. It assured us that okay, we're onto something. It's not just us, liking this product. And but then beyond Kickstarter, we continue to get emails from new customers who, hey, I was doing a Google search on 3D printed silicone, and I found your website, found your Kickstarter campaign, and I think this is just the best product ever. And we continue to this day. Just this last week, I got 2 or 3 of those kinds of emails, and so that's really it's good validation, and it's just kind of nice. It's almost like Christmas morning when you get that kind of email. It's sort of like, wow, it's this. I made somebody very happy with my product. Yeah, and who could really ask for anything more?
How much of that is like an entrepreneur? Like I could be like really pissed off or put off because I'm working on this, that, and the other. So it's not going away, and I'll get one of those emails in, and then just like to your point, Christmas Day. Yeah. So like I mean, speaking to everyone out there, how much of that just can totally 180 you in terms of a mood thing?
Oh, always, because first of all, running a startup, I mean, you're working 90 hours a week easily, and that wears on you. So I've been doing this company for about 1.5 years now, and it's 1.5 years of 90 hours a week, and so there's the sacrifices on the family time and personal time and all those other things, and so no matter what, it's going to wear on you. So when you get those kinds of emails on a fairly regular basis, it just helps bring you back and let you know, okay, keep doing what you're doing. It's working. People are happy with the product. People are excited about what you're doing. And that in turn becomes a great story for potential investors. So it's essentially what you have to keep doing. It becomes your lifeblood for your company, because as soon as you stop getting that kind of attention, that's when the nagging doubts start to really set in. Why am I doing this? Is it even worthwhile? Is this going to take off? And
what's my opportunity cost versus getting a 9 to 5?
Yes, and so if you don't have enough of that feedback, the positive feedback loop, then yeah, it does make you question: is this really happening or not? You can look at your bank account balance for your company and see, okay, yes, the money's there. So even though I'm not getting the Facebook likes or whatever else, people are paying for the product. So then that reassures you. But it's a different thing altogether, I think, to get the personal comments from people that, hey, you've changed my life. You have improved, what I'm trying to do because of your product. Yeah. So whether it be software or hardware, it's just nice to get that feedback.
No, for sure. Like I mean, we all, especially in the early days when you're going and the money's not, and the money's not there. Yeah. Like those comments, it's like just saying. Especially, and we'll talk about family in a second, but just saying, look, honey, look at this wonderful comment. It's not a regular paycheck every 2 weeks, but look at this awesome comment. Yeah. If there's one person out here, there's got to be 1,000 people like this. Yeah. And these people will give us money. And at some point, yes, we just have to figure out how.
And it's great that you mentioned that, because the last couple of weeks have been the holidays, and last year at this time, we were working in my basement trying to print samples. So it was a working holiday, and then whereas now we've actually gotten to take time off that we needed badly.
What a novel concept.
Exactly. But then what was really cool is a couple of days ago, I had a call from a potential customer in Switzerland. And then this morning, I'm sitting there making breakfast, and it's about 7 in the morning, local time, 7:30 maybe, and I get a call from England. And so I'm taking the call, talking to these customers worldwide, and then I had another call from Colorado. So my wife's seeing those regular phone calls. As much as they interrupt our family time, nevertheless, it assures her, because she doesn't see what I do in the office all day. It assures her that
you're not going to see movies during the day. You're actually doing something,
and that people worldwide are interested in our product. Yeah. So it's not just a local community in Waterloo or Kitchener or anything like that. It's people all around the world, and so that's really cool.
No, totally. So let's talk about family. Like, I know you have kids. 1 or 2, I forget. Sorry.
I have 2 kids.
You have 2. I have 2 as well. We're both fathers, both obviously involved. How to be perfectly honest, I went in only having 1 kid. Now we have close to a 4-month-old, and
Yeah.
it's a total game changer.
It is.
Trying to be dad and trying to be an entrepreneur. I remember doing my first conference call with my the new baby strapped to my chest, and I'm trying to balance and strategically put things on mute at the point when she's screaming out and have to preface every call. I mean, I've generally found people have been good and responsive, but you definitely feel pulled at both ends.
You do.
Like how do you manage it? I'll sure to share how I do it later. But.
Sure. Well, what I find is the way I manage it is knowing that I don't get as much time with my kids and my family. I try to make the time I have count the most. Mm-hmm. So I make sure that I spend a lot of one-on-one time with my kids when I am around. Like one of the Christmas gifts to my oldest daughter, who's 4, was a Melissa and Doug origami paper set with some instructions. And yesterday morning we spent probably a good hour folding paper. Yeah. And then a few days before that, we went to a coffee shop and brought that with us and folded some paper into a few things. And she was fascinated by the paper folding. Yeah. And then, but what was really interesting is how quickly she got it. Yeah. So she was folding paper balls parallel as I'm doing the steps, and hers turned out just as nice as mine. So that was really cool. It's like, hey, she's 4 years old and she's doing these kind of foldings, so that's really cool. But the fact that I got to spend the time with her and teach her that, and she's now going to remember, oh, hey, Dad spent time with me doing these kinds of things. Yeah. So that was meaningful, and then also having the one-on-one time to be able to, oh, hey, let's Daddy and daughter, let's go into a coffee shop and have a cookie and a coffee or something like that. Yeah. Those were also meaningful. So it's making those times count, and then
or extremely embarrassing My Little Pony shows that we had to go with. Yeah. By the way, we went to this show. We both ran into each other at this My Little Pony thing at the local museum. These things were like freaking you out. If anyone was like dropping acid there, they would have been tripping out by these life-size giant-headed ponies with hopefully someone dancing with them. I hope they weren't real. Pretty sure they weren't real, but but to that point.
Exactly. So we did that. That was a neat little experience. But like one time of the day that's really easy to get meaningful time with family is bedtime. Supper time and bedtime. Because the kids are home from school at that point. Mom's home from work as well. And so being able to sit down at the dinner table, there's some meaningful time that can happen there, conversations and so on. And then after dinner, there's baths or, playing some games or reading stories. Yeah. It's a very easy and perfect time slot to get some good quality time in with the family. And so as long as you have that little bit of a time slot once the kids are in bed.
Then we start our second workday.
Exactly. So you can get another 2 or 3 hours in the workday, start responding to customer emails internationally because of the time zone difference. And so it's a good way to partition the day as you need, as it works best.
No, for sure. Like we started trying to block aside 4 to 7. It doesn't always work. Yeah. We say 4 to 7 is just like blocked aside. In theory, it works well, but not always.
Not always, that's correct.
Yeah, so, and the same thing, like what we did, I got my daughter like this giant Lego set, like back in the fall. We discovered my old Lego, and then we started playing with that. Right. And this year was a Christmas Lego, so we got this big IKEA table, got some industrial strength adhesive, put down some base plates, and started making a Lego kingdom. Now our living room is the kingdom of Charlie la. So, but it was like fantastic time to spend with your daughter, and like I know she certainly appreciates it. I mean, she chats about it and makes up stories about it. So it's really tough because here you are, you're chasing a professional dream, and you have your children, which are your personal dream right in front of you, and you don't want to. You can't neglect either.
That's correct. Yes.
But at any time when you're doing one or the other, like you always feel like I should be doing that versus the other. So it's a constant teeter-totter that I don't think I've mastered. I mean, I've gotten better at it, but I don't think, can you ever really master that?
I don't think so, because there's so much dynamic stuff that can come up in either of those circumstances. Yeah. And so what you master, I think, is just how best to respond in most cases.
Mm.
So you might not get them all right, but in most cases you get better and better at responding to the situation. And by the time you've really mastered it, your kids are growing up enough to where, okay, you know, this part is a little easier now for a few years before they become teenagers or something like that. And then,
Yeah.
And then the startup thing, hopefully, it's like you either have a nice exit or you're doing startup number 2 or 3 and so on.
Or it's working and like,
yeah, exactly.
this is just new life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting, like doing like the weirdest sort of paternity leave is just like blocking off like 4 hours here, 1 day there, two hours there. It's like whatever fits into your like the meeting schedule, but also like, I mean, just recognizing when you do have some like blank space, you don't have to like just obligatorily go in. So I do think from like a fatherhood perspective, and anyone's thinking that you can't do it, that's definitely not the case. And I think I think it does provide many different opportunities that traditional ones do. I know my one buddy is working for the government, and I won't name him, but he gets 9 months off. Granted, he has twins,
right?
But and that's a totally different sort of kettle of fish, and I'm extremely happy for him. But yeah, no, it's just like very different. I mean, my wife was also self-employed, so short maternity leaves and stuff like that. So it's just like, as entrepreneurs, you just got to figure out a way to make it happen.
Exactly. Although the nice thing about it is that by having the family, it gives you something that really, what else would you be doing in your free time? And so somebody who does not have a family might be spending more and more time of their free time on the business, and that could lead to earlier burnout.
Yeah.
Versus being able to having almost a forced break.
That's a good point.
At certain days or at times of the day and whatever, just kind of helps you just break it apart a little bit more, and so you still get the burnout, but maybe not as severely.
Yeah.
You just get burnout on general just because you're overworked, but not because of your company. And so if you start getting burned out because of your company, that starts to become a very bad sign, because all your coworkers, co-founders, and so on, they can see that.
Oh yeah.
Investors can see that, and so. But if you're just tired because my kid was up till 3 a.m. sick last night or something like that, it resonates differently.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I mean, I think that like it's a generational thing. It's really changed. I mean, everyone's expecting. Obviously, fathers to be far more involved than historically they have been, even over the last 10 or 15 years. So I think when like I find it's very humanizing to use that in discussion. Say I can't do this because I'm being there. I find actually people respect me more for being honest, or saying, okay, that I'm at home today, and my kids might be sick in the background. If you hear a little girl wander into the conference call midway through, or I'm at home because my kids are sick, and if my cat shows up and starts meowing into the speakerphone, like, don't, like, who are these unprofessional people?
Right.
So I think that, like, a lot of people do telecommuting and all those different things have become far more tolerant, and quite honestly, it's very good to see. I mean, I've been doing this for about 20 years in the tech space, and a variety of different things, and seen like quite a different things. But the bar on that understanding and working in a more tolerant workplace, or even professionally, I'll speak to vice presidents, and they have their kids running into their office, and it's very humanizing. And it reminds us we're all people. So I think if you're a prick and you're not nice to someone who's got kids on the phone, well, if you don't have kids yourself, guess what? Probably a lot of other people, and you got to be tolerant of them.
Exactly. Well, and at the end of the day, the quality of the work output really is what matters, whether you have kids in the background or not. So, and that boils down more to the individual rather than the circumstance of having a family.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump back into tech. That was a good discussion, because I think sometimes we don't talk enough about like family and the sacrifices and trade-offs of entrepreneurship. I mean, it gets whispered, it gets talked about, but everyone wants to talk about exits raised, and they're understandably so. But I mean, I think it's important for a lot of parents going through that. But jumping back to the tech side of the equation, just talking about 3D printing and sort of awareness and understanding in the marketplace. So PrintJomp has the ability to order 3D printed stuff, and we're going to obviously work together in more in the coming year. But the interesting thing is that I've found is just the lack of understanding within the marketplace. I feel like there needs to be at least 2 or 3 years of more education before this is going to get really mainstream. And I'll state some examples that I sort of see on my side, and maybe if you share some stories, it'd be great. Sometimes, for example, we get like someone uploading a JPEG picture of their dog, and they're like, give me a 3D printed whatever, and it's just, and some people's like, well, I would like my name extruded there, this font face, these dimensions, just go with it.
Right.
And there's just a lack of understanding. Like, people want to start engaging in playing the space. I think for a lot of people, though, just looking at it, it's been kind of inaccessible for a lot of people, the whole 3D print. That's 3D printing revolution, and that's such a hype term. But like, what do you see, like, maybe some issues around like accessibility?
Sure. And
what needs to happen on the education side?
So in terms of the accessibility, it's a combination of factors there. But the revolution, as much of a hype as it is, I think it really is a revolution as well. So there is quite a bit, I think, of truth in that. So in terms of the accessibility, a lot of it is just in general technology. So if you think about the early days of computers, when people were buying the Atari computers or the Commodore 64 computers and so on, it wasn't, you didn't buy these things because I want to just open a picture in an email and I just want to surf on the internet and I don't want to do anything else with this thing. Nowadays, that's what the experience is like.
Yeah.
I've got this very powerful machine that has more power than the system that sent the man to the moon. Yet I just want to click email and watch YouTube videos, you know, that kind of thing, or Snapchat or whatever.
Well, who doesn't like watching tons of YouTube?
Of course.
I mean, come on.
But the user experience there is, it's all the complexity is buried away, and you can still access it, but you have to then start learning more technical skills to be able to do so. Otherwise, you're just on the front side of it, using it, and you cannot access the back side of the technical side. So it's very similar with 3D printing. If you want to design things, if you want to take a picture of your dog and then suddenly convert it into a 3D print, you have to learn about 3D scanning.
Yeah.
You have to realize that this side of the dog does not equal the back side of the dog. And
Let's hope not.
So, yeah, so then, okay, now I need to scan at the front side of the dog, this side of the dog, that side of the dog, the back side of the dog, the top side of the dog. Yeah. And there's data in all of that. There's mappings of all the contours. And then that has to be converted to an image that will look good when it 3D prints, because many times a scan might not quite get a certain area correct, and then if you 3D print that, it looks like junk. Yeah. So there's a bit of finesse you can do in those designs to take out certain parts that aren't quite correct and start to make it look good. And it's essentially the software version of being a sculptor with clay. And so then you send it off to the 3D printer, and then if everything goes well technically with the materials and the temperatures and all that, then you've got a good 3D print at the end. So that design skill, I think, is the first level of technical gaps for a lot of people. They don't really have skills in design. And even in our company, we're not especially skilled in design. We can do a little bit. If you have something like letters, you can type it in a font, raise the profile of that font, and scale that X and Y. And that's fairly basic, and there's some good software that helps you with that. That's free, even. But if I wanted to design a shoe, for example, from scratch, then I need to be an expert in some sort of CAD program like SolidWorks or you know, those kinds of things. And then I would need to be able to work with all the shapes and build this. And then even with that expertise, though, it still takes time. It's not an instant, I got an idea now, and then 30 minutes later, my design's complete and ready to print. It might take you a full day of just getting this design right, the way that it's a vision inside your mind. And then now let me try to 3D print this, and now there's an issue with the physical technology of 3D printing that, you know, doesn't let me work with my design exactly the way I want to, so maybe I have to go back and modify it. So anyway, so that design skill is one large gap right now. There's a bunch of free software that is trying to make this more accessible. However, there's still a limit on the accessibility based on the complexity of the design.
What are some shout-outs of like some good software that you've seen that's trying to make it more accessible?
So Autodesk has, I think, a 123D CAD software. I think it's web-based and it's generally pretty simple to use. So off the top of my head, that's probably the one of the easiest ones I can think of to use. And there are a number of others. There's lots of websites that have
Shout out to our folks at Autodesk.
So basically, have a look on the web for free CAD tools for 3D printing and see what Google brings back. There'll be some reviews, and then you can get an idea of what the capabilities are. But think of it on the design side, say like building a house, for example. If you were going to, you have no experience designing a house, okay, I want to just design a house today. How are you going to do it? Well, if you're not very skilled in the art, you're going to design it, it's going to look like a box. If you're skilled in the art, it's going to look like a palace.
Yeah.
So, it depends on how skilled you want to be, and you have to learn to be that skilled. So, so that's one area. And then there's the technical side, actually, of the 3D printing itself. There's the melting points of the plastic. The two main plastics being used, they melt at different temperatures, so you have to optimize that on your system. And it's hardware, so there can be fail points in there. It could be that the software says it looks like it's going to this temperature, and it's not, and so therefore it's not melting properly, not printing properly, and you're wasting some material as you realize this. So then you have to stop your print, do some troubleshooting, figure out why isn't it melting properly, or whatever. Maybe the little thermistor is not quite reading the right temperature. Maybe the nozzle is plugged up or something like that. I got to clean it. I got to take it all apart. And so most people don't want to do that level of technical stuff with a 3D printer. Most of the market nowadays does. The maker market. But outside of the maker market, the broader consumers who they just want to have the experience of, I just want to, oh look, here's a dog. I want to print a dog. Boom, I'm done. That hasn't quite happened with the 3D printing space yet. So, but on now going to the revolution part of it. This is where the people who see an opportunity from their own life experiences start to see how they can use different kinds of materials to short-circuit a prototyping process to test a design like, hey, I've got this wild product idea, rather than try to figure out how am I going to spend $10,000 of my own money to get this prototype made in China and then try to sell it, and I have to spend $100,000 to make 5,000 units or something, and then hope I can sell them. You can actually make something that you can hold in your hands, show it around to people, and do you like this? Is it cool? You can also use 3D printing to make the one-offs that scaling manufacturing does not accommodate very well. So if I want a phone case that has a particular design on it, I don't have to go to the store and here's the 5 that we sell and that's it. I want a phone case with this particular design. Okay, fine. I can actually 3D print that now. And nobody else in the world has that design or may even like that design, but it's mine.
So for sure. I guess what I'm seeing is a lot of there are 2 different types of use case coming up time and time again on 3D printing. Either you get the serious hobbyists, or you get the people that are that are doing various different things in terms of like the testing one-offs and just sort of trying to check things out ahead of time. So I think that is where what we're seeing right now. I guess where I really see the rubber meeting the road is when you see like a 3D printer everywhere and anyone can just hit a button and make that happen. Like when I see your examples, for example, like when we delve into the world of food and everything like that. If someone, my daughter's birthday is party coming up, and for those of you who haven't seen Frozen and heard Let It Go for about 1 million times, as you have a daughter, you probably have. But like, so your daughter probably wants to know on an Elsa cake. So being able to use your printer to print something on top of it in order to make their birthday party special. I mean, that's where I see is the future of your product. But obviously, to your point, I mean, there's some technical gap there in terms of mindset. And,
so that's from the broader usage, and I wouldn't exactly call being able to print icing at home the revolution of 3D printing necessarily.
I was more thinking bakeries, but
exactly, or even bakeries, but that becomes more the fun, the personalization of 3D printing. And so I print some food, and now it's in a an artistic format that I couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's edible, and so it just makes the food experience more enjoyable. So 3D printing food is a very new market. Nobody really knows how big it's going to be.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of interesting possibilities there.
Yeah.
So one neat thing about the Discovery extruder, the product we make, is that it's not limited to just food or just engineering materials like silicone. So somebody can buy this and they can just explore, and they haven't locked themselves into one platform that does only one material.
No,
so,
for sure.
But then...
but it's still got to cross that chasm.
Yes.
I still feel
Yes.
like getting it out of the hands of
Yeah.
we feel like I feel like the days of early XT computers where you have a whole bunch of tinkerers and people wanting to do stuff, and it's not quite there, and everyone builds upon it in the community.
Right, and that's where the combination.
You got to get to Windows 95.
Almost, even though that's not necessarily.
That's not really our Xanadu, but I mean, using PC computers.
I think Windows 95 is actually what pushed me to start using Linux, and I've never looked back.
Okay, well, wonderful example. Thank you.
So the technology on the design side, as well as the technology on the hardware side, both have to reach a level that make it more turnkey for the consumer to use. So if you think of inkjet printers, for example, and photo editing software, something like Photoshop is hugely complicated, more complicated than most average people at home need. So they just need a simple set of tool features. I want to take the red eye out of the photo. I want to balance the color a little bit better. They don't even have to understand the theory behind all that to do it the way a professional would. But just, okay, here's a few little things I adjust, and I'm happy with this. This looks good. Now I can send it to my printer, and I know it's going to print. So that experience on the 3D printing side is a little ways off because the trick is getting the software to have a bit more of a standard. And then the hardware to have a bit more consistency to where it's reliable, it works, it's fail-safe. However, the trade-off there is when you get that ease of use, it's more of a black box. And so the early customers right now who are very technical, they don't want a black box that's locked away and they can't get under it. So that's the balancing act that companies are doing right now in the 3D printing space. But once that chasm, is crossed, when the technical people are still satisfied that they can dive in if they need to, but then the non-technical people can still use the product like they want to, then I think that's where the sweet spot's going to be, and 3D printing really is going to explode at that point.
Cool. I know you've been in a number of different places. I've traveled a ton. You've lived in different places. What was the sort of impetus for you to relocate back here? I mean, I relocated back here, Kitchener-Waterloo, Waterloo region for the sake of branding purposes. What was it? What was the hook? What was the draw?
Well, it was sort of a lucky accident, to be honest. I'm not originally from Canada.
Okay.
So I'm actually I was born in Texas, and so I grew up there. And
bit of culture shock.
Well, not exactly. I never really fit in Texas.
Okay.
So I grew up in San Antonio and then moved to Dallas, and in Dallas is where I met my wife, who is Canadian, and her dad got moved to Texas as part of Nortel, and then moved to Dallas in the telecom corridor area there. So back in the days when telecom was a big part of the market. And so I started my career in IT, kept getting bored, decided to pursue...
What was the most boring thing you did?
Well, I was basically working on Unix systems, writing Perl and shell scripts, and sending data back and forth between various systems that were not able to communicate otherwise. So I would do basically queries on this database, dump a bunch of data into a structure that was arbitrary, pretty much. I would design in a way that made sense to me, and then send it over to this database, and in the middle of all that, parsing junk data that would otherwise be in the database, if there were phone numbers that had letters in it, for example, those kinds of little things, normal, regular expressions. And but a lot of that, there were business rules around a lot of that as well. But what I started finding was that there were a lot of businesses whose business model were far more complicated than they needed to be for what they were really doing. Insurance is one of those. The insurance business model, there's all these little gotchas. Oh, if this circumstance, then that. If that circumstance, then that. And
conditional logic is the bane of not only developers but also life.
Yeah, but well, it doesn't always have to be, because in something like the insurance business, a lot of those are they're human created.
Yeah.
You know, oh, we're not going to do this because of that. It's like, well, says who?
Yeah.
You know, and that's where a lot of startups, I think, have the edge. Is they question that. They say, why do we have this rigid practice? Let's do a short circuit around it. Yeah. And suddenly now they're the big, you know, fish in the pond, and the larger company is having trouble keeping up.
Well, we just had just this week, the one guy created that flight app to get around United.
Yeah.
To like
and
just
getting sued because he's exposing, you know, the loophole in the business model.
Well, exactly, and I think a lot of that, quite honestly, comes through how people set up their channels. And a lot of that conditional logic is, well, I got to sell to this guy at this amount, so he can sell to them at this amount. It's just it's really the margin calculation.
It's the margin calculation, but there's also sometimes there's a bit of nuttiness in business deals. So I ended up in Australia at one point, and then I was seeing things there where it's like through the universities, as far as email capacity or bandwidth, you know, for reading, downloading papers to read, or watching videos of how somebody else is assembling some equipment in the lab or something like that. And the university kept running into bandwidth issues, like, you know, we're paying too much for our internet or something like that. Yeah. You know, it was, you know, when I really started looking at some of the details of what were the problem areas, it was obvious that whoever negotiated that contract on behalf of the university didn't do a very good job. And so you see those kinds of patterns where you're just kind of like, somebody is just dropping the ball here and playing buddy-buddy with whoever they're giving money to at the expense of the broader community that needs to use this service. And so that's where startups, I think, are just shaking things up a lot.
No, for sure. I definitely see things getting shaken up. Let's see that. We talked about where we're moving. We talked about disrupt. We moved out of the way to disruptive business models.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but no, I definitely see it there. I mean, I see a generation of like salespeople or order takers.
Yeah,
where their entire world is going to shift
in
the next 5-10 years, and it's already shifting now. I mean,
yes.
Like, talk to anyone who used to be a travel agent,
right?
And see where anything in that going. And I think insurance is an area where things are right, but I think a lot of different things like that, where people want the ability to shop in their underwear at 2 a.m. in the morning and figure out what they want. But on the flip side, they also want the personalized service. But let's go back to let's go back to the
traveling. Yeah. So with the so I decided to pursue a master's in computer science, and you know, it required me to go back and take some advanced math, which I didn't have for my undergraduate degree, which was in Russian. And so I did that and managed to actually succeed at it that time around. Wow. And so I was okay, you know, calculus, I got that, and, you know, third semester multivariable calculus, okay, got that, and so on. And then I was ready to start getting more into some actual computer science courses, data sets and operating systems and things like that. And but the school was so rigid with their requirements that it really just kind of pissed me off, because no, you before you do any of that, you got to take one more math class, linear algebra, and then the way they structured that class was it was a 3-hour lecture and 4 hours of this laboratory section, they called it, which is a tutorial with the grad student. And so that was 7 hours total I would have to commit, and I was working full-time while I was doing all this. Yeah. And it was kind of like, and they didn't have these sessions at night. It was either one at night, the other during the day, or one in the day. And so it was kind of like I'd have to quit my job for this 7-hour course, which was nuts. Yeah. And there was nothing, the school was not going to be accommodating about it. They basically said, no, you have to take the lab course. And I was kind of like, well, just let me do it my own way. I'll just take the class, and then if I fail, I fail. You know, but I will learn the material. Yeah. And they were like, no. So that really pissed me off. So
they got to keep the grad student going for.
It was dumb.
The joys of academia.
Yeah. So it pissed me off enough, and I was looking for more of a challenge. Kind of looked through the other programs, what's going to be challenging for me, and so I decided physics. And sure enough, and I talked to the advisor in the physics department, explained the situation, why I wanted to switch tracks, and asked, okay, now I'm working still while I'm doing this, taking one course a semester just to make sure I'm not jumping into something that I'm not ready for or just don't want to do, and so I'd like to take my discovery at a slower rate. They said, okay, yeah, if you don't want to take the lab classes, we don't care. Just learn the material.
Yeah.
And I liked that, and I did well with that. So I was able to do the advanced coursework and ended up getting my master's in physics. And through that, I did a project, a research project, where I met my future PhD supervisor. So he actually left this university in Texas, moved to UK for a little bit, and then ended up back in Australia. And he and I kept in touch all this time. He knew I wanted to do a PhD, and he said, okay, in Australia, there's some scholarship opportunities. I can put in an application and we see what happens. And I ended up getting the full scholarship.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of like, all right, I guess, how do you say
I guess we're going to Australia.
Yeah, so we sold our house in Texas and moved to Australia. I lived there for about 3.5 years and got a PhD in chemistry. And so then at the end of that, the strange thing, which I still to this day don't understand the economics behind it, but so I get this full scholarship from Australia, and there wasn't anything easier about trying to immigrate to Australia than anybody else who just shows up at the airport. Like, hey, I'm here,
Yeah.
So there wasn't any credit really for, hey, the country, the taxpayers paid for my education.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some merit there.
Maybe we should keep them around?
Yeah, we want smarter people in our country, those kinds of things. And I would have been, it would have actually been very meaningful for me to do something to pay back for that opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, here's how I can contribute to improving Australia somehow. Through my research or through scientific education of underprivileged communities or any number of things. There's lots of opportunities, things like that. But from the immigration perspective, it was like, get the fuck out. So it's kind of like, all right.
I guess I'm going somewhere else.
So and then this was in 2010, so the U.S. economy was still shit from 2008.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to go back there. And I still thought my career track was going to be in academia at that point, as a research scientist. But the way that the university business model works for that in the United States is if you're a postdoc, you're essentially a gypsy scientist. You've got a family.
They ship you around.
Here's a 1-year contract at this university. Oh, we're not going to renew it. Lack of funding, whatever. And then now you got to move, 1,000 miles away to another university, start up in a new town, and then now you're a new resident in a new state. So therefore, like unemployment benefits and anything else, you don't get that. So there's all those little gotchas.
I want to touch on that because I think it's interesting. Do you think it's almost getting to the point that a scientist has to almost become an entrepreneur? Almost like the late 1800s and 1900s in order to really get their wares out there? They have to sell it as gone are the days that you can do like exhaustive studies on the viscosity of ketchup. Just to know, and now it's like, okay, circle back to what is how do I take this product to market?
Well, it's not, and at that time I didn't really have everything I learned in my PhD as an idea for a product, but there's nothing more that a scientist wants than to see other people benefiting from their research. So I've discovered this, and now as a result of this, the whole world benefits from it. So I believe it was Jonas Salk with the polio vaccine. He didn't patent it, simply because he wanted the world to benefit from it. He didn't, he could have maybe had a portion of $4 billion if he would have patented that.
Yeah.
But instead, the world's a better place because he was unselfish about it. And most scientists really feel that way. They would rather have their research open and free for other people to review and scrutinize and build upon. So that way, it becomes this feedback loop. The whole world benefits from it, rather than they corner something and it's all theirs and nobody else's. There's not many scientists who really think that way, as far as I've encountered. And
but then I guess in the startup world, there's going to be an interesting push and pull into that because from this from the strategies, you're trying to create IP, you're trying to create,
Yes.
you're trying to create value,
Yeah.
and then subsequently shareholder value.
That's true.
And then exit to someone as
But
opposed
still
to
a little-
opening up
yeah.
like a
Yeah.
platform. Like
Yeah.
I asked what the, like we were talking about Linux earlier. Like
Yeah.
everyone was like, I remember back in like the late '90s, early 2000s. Oh, Linux is gonna take, and to some extent it has.
Yeah.
But it still hasn't cannibalized traditional like Microsoft's license
Not
model.
on the desktop.
Not on
However,
the desktop.
On the internet web servers and
Oh,
so on,
yeah.
Apache web servers by far.
Yeah, for
You know?
sure.
So there's a place for everything. And so in terms of the conflict for scientists versus a startup mentality, I don't really think there is much. So we decided to come to Canada instead of the United States, and it was just by good luck that we had family in the area,
Yeah.
KW area, that we landed here, and then after probably sending about 300 resumes to various jobs worldwide, I finally got contacted by a local startup company who hired me, and that was my first introduction to the startup community here.
How many of those applications were to RIM or BlackBerry at the time?
I don't think many, because most of them were very software oriented.
Okay,
and
fair
obviously,
enough.
Like
This is everyone moving to always has their story. It's like I applied like
Yeah.
6 times in a RIM. And
No, RIM and BlackBerry it was very heavily software based, or
Yeah.
if it was or very engineering based. So that was
Yeah.
another thing. Here I came to Canada as a materials scientist, but not a materials engineer. And so even though there's a lot of common knowledge between those titles,
Need that iron ring.
yeah, exactly. So that basically limited many of the opportunities that I could have pursued. And then secondly, science funding in Canada has been gutted, essentially. So I couldn't exactly go into a postdoc position either.
Gotcha.
Thought I might have. So yeah, really, it ended up being that the entrepreneurship path, and it was the best path for me career-wise. And then the long-term benefit, though, is as I was getting my feet wet in the startup community and learning about startups and, how is this going to work? How am I going to make a business out of this?
Yeah.
I kept going back to what are the strongest skill sets that I have in order to do this. And it kept going back to my material science, my 3D printing, and so on. And so I started thinking of, okay, this thing that I developed in the laboratory for printing soft materials, do other people want a product like this? Is there a way for me to turn it into a commercial product?
In a year and a half, 2 years later?
Yeah, well, exactly. And so I started doing early validation before incorporating or spending any money. Talk to the local maker community. Would you guys be interested in something like this? And the overwhelming feedback was positive, not really much negative feedback at all. So that gave me the confidence to say, okay, my personal employment situation is not going so well right now. I have nothing to lose. Why don't I try this? And
well, you always got something to lose.
Well, of course, but no, I actually I've been in the 3 years I've been in Canada, I've actually been unemployed most of the time.
Okay, well,
So,
in that case,
it was just kind of like, here's our
it's
last little bit of savings. Let's give it a try.
No, okay.
And so very, a precarious position, but it was kind of like I wasn't going anywhere by sending out resumes. So I didn't have a strong Canadian network. My network had been prior in the States or in Australia.
Yeah.
So I was a stranger to everybody.
And it
here.
doesn't translate as well, obviously.
Exactly. So
so you're here now. Like,
yes.
what's your, like? You've been in 3 different distinct places in your professional life. What's your feel of the community? How does it embrace you? Do you feel like an outsider? What are your thoughts?
I think initially I felt like an outsider, and that was because I didn't understand the community very well. I didn't understand how do I get further connected into this community, and then I also didn't understand where do I fit, because I was still thinking of myself as a research scientist or a company scientist or something to that effect. I wanted to work for somebody else. And in the startup community here, there's a lot of respect for people who take their own skill set to the next level. Whether it's becoming an entrepreneur or not, that's not the point. It's more or less, are you very, very good at what you specialize in?
Yeah.
And so once I understood that, I think it was a little bit easier for me to fit in. I didn't feel like I had to keep impressing other people. I do what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And so...
And hope they gravitate to that.
Right, exactly. And then...
and if they don't, fuck them.
Of course, yeah, because you have to have a thicker skin that way.
Well, exactly. I mean, not everyone's going to like it.
Yeah, and so once I realized that, and I started to have some early validation on the product, and okay, now I'll spend some money and start making this prototype and so on. then I was able to bring on my co-founder, who I just recently met, actually, and but he was doing academic research, his PhD at the University of Waterloo, same area that I'd essentially studied. So Andrew and I really clicked together very well on this product idea and the business opportunity behind it. And so that was our way of, as scientists, bringing our knowledge to the world.
Yeah.
So even though we're selling it, we have to make a living. It's not exactly locked up like you can't have it kind of a thing. You can't touch it. You can't hack it or play with it or anything like that. We're providing it. We're doing all the work behind the scenes to make it a real product. But then nevertheless, it is something like, here, use it and tell us how you're using it. Give us some feedback. So,
for sure.
So anyway, so we've been able to satisfy that aspect, the balance between being an entrepreneur versus being a scientist and just willy-nilly, here's everything free to the world. But having the early traction and early validation, I think, really helped. It started the confidence feedback loop, and so then I think the final boost us to where we really felt like we're launching was when we started applying to Hyperdrive. So our first business mentor,
Hyperdrive, for benefit, was a local incubator.
Accelerator at Communitech, the Communitech incubator. So Duncan McDowell was our first mentor, and he sort of put us on the spot when he asked us if we were applying to Hyperdrive, because we hadn't really planned to. I was not very confident. That I was like, are we big enough yet? I'm not sure. Do we have enough of a business?
We have something.
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't have that level of confidence yet to say, yeah, we're big shots here. And his response to our insecurities was essentially, why wouldn't you apply? Because it was free, we had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, we haven't really done this before, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
So we applied, and then out of the 200 companies that applied, we got in. And so there were 5 companies total that got in.
Yeah.
And and then we, once we were in the program a couple of months and we realized what those odds were, it just blew us away. We just felt so fortunate to be in that program, and it truly turned into a game changer for us, because we went from being a company with no revenue, no customers, no idea of how to fully approach the market, to suddenly now we're getting this boot camp, we're getting all these mentorship.
And you're getting positioned.
We're getting positioned, exactly. We're being taught how do you launch a campaign, marketing campaign, whether it's Kickstarter or otherwise. How do you build the excitement around this? How do you build a brand around this? How do you think about the pitfalls of the manufacturing side of the business and make sure that you do it economically? Because again, the early stages of a startup, it's one misstep and you could lose totally. Yeah. So we got a lot of lessons. It's always
one step that you
but having those lessons, having the mentors who were able to help us avoid some of those early pitfalls, and that I think was instrumental for us. And then now we have a much more solid idea of, okay, how do we continue the next year of our company's growth? Okay, we've got a pretty good handle on that. So.
So just to sort of close and wrap things up, I mean, I think you hit on some really good points. I mean, both as family guys, as fathers, if you're a dad and you're worried about starting your own business, yes, it comes with its own unique set of challenges, but it's not impossible. It can be done. The other thing I thought was really interesting, you coming from a science background, and then you're saying, well, okay, well, I want to better create something better, or I want to have something that people are going to use and appreciate that. I think it's an excellent message for people that are a little bit more technical, that don't know how to, or even step out of academia or that comfort zone and do that. And I think comfort zone is a really good discussion point, especially when we're talking about we're on January 2nd here, the day after New Year, and everyone's reevaluating themselves in the next year. It's like, is this a good year? Is this a bad year? Do I step outside of my comfort zone, or do I do the exact same thing? And then just building those feedback loops as you're talking about, and or like, okay, how do you and I like what you said specifically around validation. Like, how do I validate this before I put myself, my family, my savings account, or someone else's savings account at jeopardy? So, no, I think Great point. So you have any other pearls of wisdom that you want to leave us with before we go?
So anybody currently doing a PhD or having completed one, if you've done that or are experiencing it, you know very well that it takes a tremendous amount of work and organization to complete a PhD project. That same skill set transfers very well to being an entrepreneur, because you have a mountain of work with no organization wrapped around it at all, and you just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So the parallel there is very uncanny. It's not kind of creepy. It's almost like everything I learned doing my PhD really it was maybe the entrepreneur I am today. So anybody in academia, having done a PhD or currently pursuing one, if there's a bit of a intimidation about jumping into entrepreneurship, keep that in mind.
Cool. Well, I very much appreciate you coming for our first. This is the very first episode of hoping to be a long and successful web show, and if not, this conversation on its own was great. So thanks for stopping by, Charles, and Happy New Year to you and your family, and best wishes to your company in 2015.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, that is pretty much it. I don't have a witty sign-off yet. That I have to send that over to marketing and get their opinion on that. We don't even know what this friggin' show is called yet, but hey, we can rename things on YouTube as we go. Anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by, and we'll be back again, hopefully with another exciting guest like Charles. Thanks, Charles.
No worries.
Thanks.